Let me show you one of the best things that I've learned to level up in my drawing. And that is something that seems very simple, but it's made such an impact on my drawing. That is to draw really light. So let's look at this pig here. And if we wanted to draw this, and I would be drawing like I was doing before I learned this technique, I'll just draw a little one right here. I would draw very defined, and I would get my shapes in, but I'm very tight with my lines, and I've got one line there, and I'm not giving myself many options, but I've just kind of defined it, and I've committed really soon. So if I'm wanting to draw it, even if I'm doing a lot of lines, if I'm drawing too dark, I'm committing to my lines. So let's go ahead and put that away. I started a bigger piece of this funny looking pig here, and let me just show you. One of the biggest things that I've learned is to draw really light and loose. So holding my pencil on the far end, I like to actually go like this and hold it on the end like this, and that forces me to draw light and loose. And I've started some shapes here. I'm going to start with the very basic shapes, which is how I usually start my drawings, but I'm not going to commit. I'm going to start getting my lines in. They're very light, so you may not see hardly anything right now. But if you commit to your lines too soon, then you have a hard time getting rid of them. And sometimes you just don't care anymore. You're like, oh, I put so much into it and it's so dark, it's good enough. And we don't want to have that good enough feeling. So we're going to go ahead. I'm looking at my picture here, and I'm just going to give myself some guidelines. I'm going to pull this up just a little bit and angle it off. Can you see that I am not worried about just one definite line, but I'm basically giving myself a lot of lines. So many lines give you many options. So I'm not committing to anything. I'm just laying out something on the paper here so that I can choose what I want when I'm ready for it. But I love the idea of the light, loose lines. And what happens is, for most people, and me as well, is when I draw defined and too dark, I tend to use my eraser all the time. And I'm committing, and then I'm erasing, and then I'm committing, and then I'm erasing. But with this method, I don't have to worry about my eraser. I try really hard not to even use my eraser unless it's something that's just causing so much confusion. I feel like I have to, just to be able to get things right. What I want to do is I basically want to get shapes in. I want to play with it. It's kind of like I'm just getting familiar with what the picture is and trying to decide about the placement of everything. So I'm kind of playing with it, and you can see all these light lines. Well, what happens is, instead of erasing them, I am going to just let them recede into the background. So all these lines will basically go away from view. Most of them will still be here, but they'll be hiding underneath other things because they're darker. You won't even notice them. So you can see my lines are very, very light. I hope you can see them in the video, because it's hard to teach to draw really light and then draw darker. So I'm actually drawing a little bit darker than I normally do, and I'm gonna darken it just a little more, just because I know it's harder to see. But you can see that I am just keeping nice, light, loose lines and trying to figure out where everything belongs first. I was having a conversation with somebody about light, loose lines, and one of my students, and he was saying, well, I don't know how to tell, if I'm drawing light or not. And basically, draw as light as you can and still be able to see your lines when you first start out, and then let your pressure increase as you're ready to commit to the lines. And we were talking about it, and kind of the idea of when you first start drawing, think of it as dating. When you first draw your lines, they're just light lines. You're not committing to anything. You're not getting married. Don't commit too soon. So don't get married. You got to date before you get married. So I thought that was kind of a good analogy. You just kind of light, loose lines. Don't commit too soon. And then when you're ready and you know you've got everything where you want it, then you can commit and do the darker lines. So you can see how I'm building all of these lines up, and I'm just trying to get an idea of where everything is. And I'm feeling pretty good about the lines that I have. And I'm hoping you can see them. I'm going to go ahead and slide my fingers further down on the pencil. I'm still not committing, but I'm going to do a little bit darker so you can kind of see what's happening here. And I'm going to pay attention a little bit more. I worked from big to littler shapes, but I'm going to pay attention to smaller changes here and try to get my shapes in and stuff. So as I do that, I'm going to notice that some of the shapes that I've drawn are not in the right place. Maybe this one's a little too high. So I'm not going to worry about those lines that I don't need any longer. I'm just going to let them be. And I'm going to move it down, and I'm not going to allow myself to be confused by anything as much as I can, because sometimes it's just too confusing. But yeah, I've got extra lines right here, you can see, but I'm going to be fine with that. I can even put a little bit of value in there so I can tell that that's the one I'm focused on. So let's go ahead and move to the other side here. This one's a little higher than that one, so this is probably about right. And I'm going to just get this shape in, but you can see that my lines are still loose and light. So what I like to do is I like to keep my pencil moving instead of stopping my pencil when I need to stop and think for a minute. I just keep my pencil moving. And what that does is it keeps my brain engaged, and I'm not starting from scratch going, okay, now where was I? I just keep that pencil moving, and it's just ever so slightly. But as I'm thinking about what's next, I'm just kind of keeping my arm or my pencil moving in some way. And that helps me stay engaged with where I'm at. So that's another thing that you can do to help you stay light and loose and engaged and focused on what you're working on. So this guy is a beast. So I'm not going to get very far on him. We'll do a little ways just so you can see what happens as you start to commit to your lines here. I'm actually working with a 4H pencil. I'm going to move to an HB pencil in just a minute. I just want to make sure I've got my shapes in here where I want them to be. Can you see how it's kind of building up? Before you probably didn't see anything. Now you can probably see a little bit, and it's building up a little more and more. I can see this line's a little off. I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to slide it over and leave that extra line there. I can add a little value here to know that that's the line I'm going with. I'm just focused on lines, keeping my pencil moving, increasing my value just a little bit so I can tell which line I want to keep. So we're going to get his jaw in here and his nostrils here. Tend to draw circles for nostrils, but if you look at them, those are definitely not fully round circles. So we're going to pay attention to the shapes that we see here and draw what we actually see, not a stylized version of what we're seeing. So can you see we kind of have built that up, and we can tell a little bit about where everything's going. We've got some extra lines here and here, a couple places that we're not using, but we're not going to allow those to distract us. Let's go ahead. I'm just going to grab a number 2 pencil, which is an HB pencil, and I'm going to go a little bit darker. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in my mind. I'm going to kind of zoom in and try to get a little bit more detail, commit to things. But I'm just letting those lines be that I have already drawn, and I can see I want that to go a little thinner, so I'll just do that. And you can work your way around or whatever method you want, but as you do it, look at what you've already drawn and then ask yourself, is it the right proportion or the right angle? And make an adjustment if you need to. Just because it's on the paper does not mean it's set in stone. When you are drawing or painting, you're constantly adjusting and readjusting and making sure things are right. Now I can see here that this ear is wrong, so I'm going to go ahead and get this part in. And I'm going to pull that up just a little bit. You can see I'm still sketching away here. Now this line is going to probably cause a little confusion, so I'll do a little bit more, and if it does, then it's okay to use the eraser and touch it up. Just don't constantly use your eraser. Only use it if you need it. Okay, let's go ahead and get a little bit of value in here and commit to a few lines just to give you an idea of how to move from that sketchy step to getting in some details. And he's got some funny little hairs here. We're going to go ahead and get his eyes in. The eyes are the window to the soul, so we're going to put those in and put a little reflection in there so it looks like somebody's home. Can't see much of them, but they're there, so we're going to put those in. And I'm just doing a quick sketch. If I wanted to add a lot of detail to this, I would definitely spend a lot more time on it. But just to give you the idea of sketching, light and loose is basically what I wanted to do. That eye is very hard to see in this picture, so just trying to look at shapes. Get the shapes in, get some value in. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and get this nostril in, and I'm gonna go a little darker now. I'm gonna start filling in, and remember I'm just doing a loose sketch, so it's okay to do some hatch marks to get the shading done as well, but I'm going to adjust as I draw. And I'm going to start committing to my lines a little bit more. Love the wrinkles on the top of his nose, so we're going to put some of those in. I'm not worrying about it being perfect because I'm just doing a little sketch, but I'm just trying to find that there's some wrinkles there and get those in. Put some on this side as well and get this edge in. So as you start drawing, remember you use your pencil really light. You draw nice light lines, you hold it lightly, and you don't commit too soon. You just start drawing and build up these lines, and don't worry about any extra lines. Let them just recede into the background. You can see here we've got a lot of different lines, but as we build up the value and we commit to our lines and which ones we want to use, the other ones tend to just recede into the background. We can add all sorts of detail to it, and we can tweak it however we want, but if we start with the lines, we've given ourselves the ability to make changes without busying ourselves with an eraser all the time. So if you want to level up your drawing, I love this idea of light, loose lines, and commit only when you've got a bunch of lines down, and allow those lines to just remain and recede into the background. I hope that helps.